Reform, UK's unexpected victory at the 2025 local elections, has sent shockwaves across the country. It has also put the political establishment in complete panic mode. Thankfully, British politics, as we've known it for generations, has crossed a line no one thought it would ever dare approach, let alone trample over. It all began with a historic electoral triumph. One so sweeping, so unexpected, and so brutally clear in its message that the ruling elite didn't simply panic, they retreated into survival mode. And now, in a move so unprecedented that it's left historians, commentators and citizens alike stunned, King Charles III himself has reportedly been drawn into the chaos, not just as a passive observer, but as a quiet actor behind the scenes, called upon, it is said, to help prevent what insiders are describing as a constitutional crisis. How did this whole drama start? Let's break it down. Nigel Farage, the man once cast aside as a fringe troublemaker, has now emerged as the dominant force in British politics. The man who once fought from the margins has bulldozed his way to the centre of power. The local elections conducted a few days ago across Britain revealed something shocking. Farage and Reform UK didn't just have a good night. They tore through the political landscape like a tidal wave. 677 council seats. Control of 10 local councils wrested from the old parties, and 2 mayoral seats were secured. This was a decisive by-election victory in Runcorn and Helsby that left pundits reeling.
I met today in the House of Commons with Mandy Damari. You can see the pictures. Her daughter Emily was taken on the 7th of October by Hamas when they invaded Israel. Her dog was killed. She was taken into captivity. She's not been heard of for months. We hope and pray that she's still alive. But here's the incredible thing. Almost no one in Britain knows that we still have a British citizen being held captive. The government say nothing. Incredibly, yesterday the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, met Mandy, had a photograph, arm round her, then put out on social media a plea for humanitarian assistance in Gaza with not a mention of the hostages or Emily at all. This government, being no doubt about it, has written off the Jewish population. They're not interested. You know why? There aren't enough of them, and they're losing votes to hardline Islamist candidates, and so they're pandering to Hamas and the pro-Gaza side of the argument. The job of a British government isn't just to defend our territory, it's to stand up for our citizens. Years ago, a man called Don Pacifico, he was a British citizen of Portuguese descent. He was Jewish, and there he was in Athens when a mob attacked his house. Lord Palmerston, who was our Prime Minister, advised him to go to the Greek government and ask for damages. They refused. Do you know what Palmerston did? He sent the Royal Navy. They blockaded Athens with the threat of shelling it so that right was done by a British citizen. That's how we used to do things in this country. It was called gunbloke diplomacy. We did it to defend our people, and today we have a British citizen being held by these savages, and the government appears not to even care less. I hope that you do. Yet Donald Trump, the US president, does care about the hostages and says they'll be held to pay if they're not released before he gets inaugurated on January the 20th. It takes an American president to stand up for a British citizen because our government, frankly, can't be bothered.
In one night, Farage managed to do what few thought possible, outflank both the Conservatives and Labour in their backyards. As the results poured in, he declared it plainly for all to hear. This is the beginning of the end for the Conservative Party. But if the Tories are bleeding, it is Labour that is hemorrhaging. And Farage, as always, knows where to strike.
At a general election, and there was no surprise that the Tories got completely trounced as they betrayed their voters and let the country down terribly. So Labour won a landslide. But I've got to tell you, it was a loveless win. And now here we are, just over 9 months into this government, and I cannot remember in my lifetime a fall from popularity as rapid as this has been. First they came for the pensioners, taking away their winter fuel allowance at a time when we have some of the most expensive energy prices in the world. Then they came for the small family farms, people who were making hardly any money at all, and yet they want to break those farms up. That, I have to say, for the rural communities has been a deep shock. Nothing like this was in their election manifesto. But they're also coming for working people. Now, you might have noticed this week that Richard Tice and I went up to Scunthorpe, we met the steel workers, we said there are 3 days to save primary steelmaking in Britain, and the government did act. But don't believe any of it, because Port Talbot has gone, and we're now living through an industrial massacre. Whether it's refining, whether it's aluminium making, whether it's steel making, whether it's cement making, whatever it may be, because of our net zero lunacy, which of course...
He didn't wait. Within hours of the results being finalised, whispers began to emerge from Westminster. Sources close to the top brass of Reform UK began leaking details. Farage had reached out to senior MPs on both sides of the aisle. His proposal, a cross-party alliance, resulted in an emergency, ruthless, calculated move, a vote of no confidence in Keir Starmer, designed to bring down the government before Labour could recover and before the media could do what it always tries to do, turn the populist surge into a passing story and a glitch in the system. But this time, the system itself blinked, because behind closed doors, something remarkable happened. Nightly whispers from within Buckingham Palace suggest that King Charles was advised to intervene, not directly of course, but with royal discretion.
Parliament is the living and breathing instrument of our democracy. That your traditions are ancient, we see in the construction of this great hall. My lords and members of the House of Commons, we gather today in remembrance of the remarkable span of the Queen's dedicated service to her nations and peoples. While very young, Her late Majesty pledged herself to serve her country and her people, and to maintain the precious principles of constitutional government which lie at the heart of our nation. She set an example of selfless duty, which, with God's help and your counsels, I am resolved faithfully to follow.
The Crown, it is alleged, urged restraint. Constitutionality, national unity they called it. Let's not mince words. The monarchy, our monarchy, may have just stepped in to protect a Prime Minister on the ropes from the will of the electorate. The men who won more new seats than Labour and the Conservatives combined are not being challenged at the ballot box, but blocked by palace advice and quiet interference. This is not democracy. This is fear. Raw, unfiltered establishment fear. Because Nigel Farage does not just threaten the parties, he threatens the entire political architecture. The backroom deals, the legacy appointments and the ideological echo chambers that have dictated national policy for decades. He represents a Britain that Westminster has long tried to ignore. Ordinary people who are fed up, worn down and sick of being patronised. People who have seen their towns hollowed out, their values sneered at and their voices drowned in the corridors of power. Farage gives them a voice, and now the system is scrambling to silence it. We've seen this film before, haven't we? They said Brexit would never happen. It did. They said Farage could never lead a major party. He has. They said Reform UK would be a footnote. Now it's knocking on the gates of number 10. And as always, when the people move, the elite strikes back. But why are they so desperate? Keir Starmer's Labour Party is not merely struggling, it's tearing itself apart from the inside. The so-called Red Wall Caucus, those Northern and Midland backbench MPs who once helped deliver Labour's resurgence, is on the brink of open revolt. For months they've been warning, deal with mass immigration, restore order and reconnect with working class voters, or prepare to be wiped out. Starmer didn't listen, and now they're watching their seats evaporate. Some are reportedly already in secret discussions with Reform UK. Others have issued ultimatums, backed digital ID cards for migrants, overhauled the asylum system, or crossed the floor. Meanwhile, Public concern about immigration is higher than it has been in decades. According to the latest polls, over 70% of Britons believe immigration levels have been far too high for the past 10 years. Still, Labour refuses to move. And so what do? They appeal to the palace. They rely on royal caution to defend their grip on power. That's not governance. That's a weakness hiding behind velvet curtains. But it doesn't end there. Let's remember the 2023 Public Order Act, the piece of legislation that turned Britain into a protest-free zone. The law that lets police arrest you not for rioting, but for being too noisy, for making a public fuss, for daring to dissent. Where was Labour when that was passed? Silent. Where was Labour when our right to protest was trampled, missing? And now they dare to accuse Nigel Farage of being a threat to democracy. This isn't about protecting democracy, it's about preserving privilege. What happened at the ballot box wasn't a fluke, it was a revolution in slow motion. The Tories collapsing, Labour splintering, the Lib Dems picking through the wreckage, and Reform UK. They're not just knocking at the doors of power, they're battering them down. And the monarchy, it seems, is trying to hold the door shut. It's more than undemocratic. We are told the King's advisers are concerned about stability. But ask yourself, whose stability are they protecting? Not the factory worker in Doncaster whose job vanished overseas, not the young mother in Birmingham who can't get a GP appointment, not the pensioner in Wrexham choosing between heating and eating, certainly not the millions of Britons who feel like strangers in their own country. No, the stability they seek to preserve is their own. The stability of a political elite that governs without listening, that lectures instead of serves, that controls instead of empowers. But Nigel Farage isn't going quietly. In a searing statement from Reform UK's new headquarters, he thundered, "We are not going away. We are not going back to our corners. The British people have spoken, and we will not be silenced by palace whispers or backroom deals. This is only the beginning. A general election is coming, whether the elites like it or not. And when it comes, every Labour MP who sneered at the people, every Tory who sold out their base, and every media outlet that tried to spin and suppress the truth, they will face the reckoning, because the game has changed. The mask has slipped, the illusion is shattered, and Britain, she's waking up. And here's the irony. The darker it gets for Nigel Farage, the more he shines, because every attempt to silence him, to shut him down, to block him from Westminster's corridors of power only fuels the very fire they're trying to extinguish. Call him dangerous, call him divisive, call him what you like, but the people, they've already decided. They're not turning back, and they're certainly not waiting for permission. What's coming, not by palace whispers, not by party machines, and certainly not by a political class that no longer knows how to listen. The public has spoken, and now they are watching. Which brings us to another twist in this rapidly unravelling drama. A legal battle that has struck yet another blow to the crumbling edifice of establishment control. The government has just lost its appeal in one of the most explosive legal showdowns in recent memory. The Court of Appeal has now upheld a previous High Court ruling that declared Salib Braverman's notorious anti-protest regulations unlawful, marking a seismic victory for civil liberties in this country. A law introduced without a full vote in Parliament and defended vigorously by both Conservative and Labour governments has now been dismantled in court. Let that sink in. A Home Secretary, first Braverman, then James Cleverly, and finally Labour's Everett Cooper, fought tooth and nail to uphold a regulation that criminalises protest for causing more than minor disruption. That's all it took.
Now, the High Court has today ruled regulations which lowered the threshold for police intervening in protests were unlawful. The civil liberties group Liberty brought the action against the Home Office after the then Home Secretary Suella Braverman lowered the threshold at which police could impose conditions and shut down protests. Well, I'm joined now by our political correspondent, Tamara Cohen. Tamara, this is a blow for the former Home Secretary Suella Braverman, isn't it? She basically broke the law.
Yes, this is a blow for the Home Office, who have allowed the police to use these powers quite extensively over the last few months. Liberty took the Home Office to court over when the police can intervene in protests, because new powers were given to the police last summer by the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, without the usual parliamentary scrutiny, to change the definition, essentially, of serious disruption to community life. That was the wording in the Public Order Act, and the definition was changed from something significant and prolonged to something defined as more than minor, and it introduced a number of new offences, for example, locking in when people attach themselves to buildings or to other people. It was made clear by the former Home Secretary that this was aimed at some of the protests by groups like Just Stop Oil, Insulate Britain and Extinction Rebellion, and wanting the police to intervene in more instances. Now, the case was heard by the High Court in February, and we've learnt this morning that the High Court are quashing that provision. They've said it was introduced unlawfully. The way it was introduced was not done properly, and it was done without consultation. Now, as I understand it, these regulations under which hundreds of people have been arrested remain in place for now, and the government have not responded yet, but we expect them to say that they will be taking leave to appeal. So this battle continues, but certainly a blow given that the government are already looking at introducing more restrictions on protests.
Tomorrow.
Just a bit more noise, a bit more visibility, and the police could shut you down. No riots, no blockades, just being a little too inconvenient. And who stopped them? Not Parliament, not the parties, not the so-called defenders of democracy inside. Westminster? It was Liberty, the civil rights group, and 5 judges across 2 courtrooms. That's it. That's all that stood between us and the erosion of one of our oldest rights, the right to dissent. If you enjoyed this political firestorm, like the video and subscribe to the channel for more fascinating political content.